Now, you might be wondering, what about Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Doom, or the Gloom, Doomy Doom room beams? That story just ends with our hero thwarting Dr. Otto and riding off into the sunset with two women, one being his assistant who he constantly abuses as a joke, and the one that was a former henchman of Dr. Otto that he is now, owns legally, according to whenever this film was made. Hello and welcome to Blockbuster Reviews. If you haven't seen it before, basically I try to review a film while playing a single game of Chill Marathon on Tetris Effect. Essentially, I talk about a movie until the blocks get all the way to the top, or I clear 150 lines. And the tentative rule is I don't start spoilers until line 50. However, quick spoiler alert, I don't think you're gonna care about this one specifically. What do I want to do? Do Aurora Peak. Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam is a film that lies to its potential watcher almost immediately. If you look up Dr. Otto and the Gloom Beam, you're probably going to see a picture of Ernest P. Worrell, and if you know who that is, that was the character that spearheaded a successful run of franchise movies for children about Ernest. Ernest Goes to Camp was the first big major one. He goes to school. He goes to Africa. He joins the army. He goes to jail. Ernest did a whole bunch of stuff, but before Ernest did any of that, Jim Varney, who plays Ernest, was in this movie, Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam, and anything you see for Dr. Otto and the Gloom Beam will show a picture of Jim Varney as Dr. Otto and Ernest, which is a lie. Ernest is in that movie the same way that Nick Fury is in the original Iron Man. Dr. Otto is a supervillain who comes up with this ingenious plan to ruin the economy by making basically all banking non-existent, erase all the records of debt, and somehow erase all the information on physical credit cards and checks. Don't know how this machine does that, but it does. He starts by attacking financial centers in the Midwest, which was an interesting move, because I don't know why you wouldn't start with the really big financial hubs on the coast, maybe just to test to see if the plan will even work. I'm not sure. His plan will cause, a bunch of bankers to be, quite perplexed and confused about what to do, and they enlist the help of this hero whose name I don't remember because this movie was fucking garbage. And his role was to parse out this riddle that Dr. Otto put forth to the nation, where he streamed simultaneously on every device, including video games in arcades. Don't know how he did that. This guy is a master of technology, and he's using it to screw with the economy and not just sell any of this shit to live how he'd want, because he looks like he lives in trash. Jim Varney has put on a completely asinine accent, and I know how ridiculous that is when we're talking about the guy who does Ernest, where all Ernest does is play characters, which is basically the point of this movie. It seems that Otto is just the first character in a line of opportunities for Jim Varney to play other characters. And one of those other characters is Ernest, and not even until the very end. And the film implies that every other time you've seen Ernest in the Ernest films, it's actually Dr. Otto in a character of Ernest. So it's really shaken my world to the core as someone who owns all of the Ernest movies. You heard that correctly. Except for the Disney promotional films and the television show, which won him a Children's Programming Emmy back in the day. I have all of the Ernest P. Worrell adventures, theatrical adventures. I did it, I got all of them mostly out of curiosity, because I knew they would not be that expensive, and they weren't. And kind of an odd curiosity. Some folk enjoy serial killer documentaries. I enjoy watching the character Ernest being put in certain situations. Now, you might be wondering, what about Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Doom, or the Gloom, Doomy Doom room beams? That story just ends with our hero thwarting Dr. Otto and riding off into the sunset with two women, one being his assistant who he constantly abuses as a joke, and the one that was a former henchman of Dr. Otto that he is now, owns legally, according to whenever this film was made. The movie is trying to be a comedy, and some of the jokes are indeed jokes. Most of them aren't good. It's kind of frustrating to watch, because you might notice this with bad movies, where the movie is so bad it is impossible to pay attention to. Especially in this day and age with smartphones and social media, and where ADHD reigns, the very idea of giving your attention to this movie is impossible. And I don't remember most of it. I went back and rewound it no less than 7 times, and I still don't know a lot about what happened in terms of plot. I know at one point Dr. Otto became a pirate, which somehow had to do with this trash monster that ended up knowing the hero, so the trash monster let him off and let him be. I know at one point he became Auntie Nelda, which is a character from Ernest movies, almost every single one, I'm pretty sure, and she ran like this highway diner in the middle of the forest. It's all very blurry and confusing, and it makes me feel unsafe, so I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to talk about Ernest. This movie is interesting because Ernest, if you did not know, was the creation of an ad agency. Ernest P. Worrell was literally created to sell shit. I believe he was used in like regional milk commercials, and I know Disney used him for like a park video. It's not a character like developed by a comedian, like a Jim Varney maybe have developed a character like Pee Wee Herman. No, this is a character completely made by a corporation, and then the character attempted to make more and more money off of its audience by just going on adventures that made less and less sense as time went on. And going into this Otto movie, thinking that Ernest was in it, finding out he isn't really, and then remembering this about the ad agency, kind of brought it all together. Because you realize, oh yeah, they were just throwing shit at the wall because they had money. They knew, what's his name? They knew Jim Varney was a get, and he had the chops to do something interesting, but they just didn't know what, and then they completely whiffed on this Otto character, but ended up scoring big time with Ernest. And then, of course, years later, in the age of the internet, when everybody can find anything that's ever been made, they were like, oh, we gotta put that Dr. Otto shit out again. But we'll mention that it's Jim Varney's first movie and just say that it's Ernest, because people will assume that Ernest is in it a bunch, and he isn't, and we've already got their, like, $3.99. And, yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible capitalism. It's what happens when an ad agency tries to make art. It's absolute garbage. And normally, like, if this was any of the Ernest films, I'd have something to say in terms of, okay, the movie's bad, but watch out for this. And what's weird is Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam is trying to say something about, like, America, I think. And it's, like, obsession with patriotism and money and its belief that we have the best economic system in the world, even though it's very fragile and based on a lot of people's faith and not on any real thing. But it's also so fucking bad that it's making those points, and then you're like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, dude. Could you just stop talking, please? Because you're the worst. It's the same, like, I'm trying to think of an. It's like when, like, if you were in high school and there's a kid in class who you know is right, but what they're doing and how they're presenting it makes you so angry at them, and it's over. Not gonna finish that metaphor. Not gonna finish what I was talking about. Don't go watch Dr. Otto and the Riddle of the Gloom Beam unless you want to waste about an hour and a half and you don't want to pay attention. It's great for getting on your apps. It's a great app movie, if that makes any sense. Have a good one.